Hello, welcome to Soulprint Intuitive Tarot for December 7th, Canadian edition. So I want to take a quick look. COVID is just out of control everywhere. And I just want to sort of take a look at what's going on politically, what's going on with COVID, and how we're doing here in Canada. Now, for those of you who maybe are not, Canadian or maybe and are not paying close attention, that's okay. As of Saturday evening, there were 408,921 cases of COVID that Canada has had. Now, Canada is very good about giving recovery numbers. So of that 408, almost 409,000, there are currently 71,450 active cases, but that's a lot given the size of our country. And unfortunately, we have lost almost 13,000 souls. And as most of you know, I live in Alberta, and Alberta is right out of control. We have the highest numbers, per capita. So even though we are a smaller province with smaller numbers, like Ontario's numbers are twice as high as ours, but they have 3 or 4 times the population. So we are struggling here in Alberta. We're really close to, 19,000 active cases right now. We've had a total of 67,000. Just to give you some idea, Quebec has had a total of about 150,000. Ontario has had a total of 300,000. So I want to take a look at what's going on, because you know what, this has turned into a political football, which unfortunately is really, really, really sad to see. So here in Saskatchewan and Alberta, people are really upset with what their premiers are doing and how their premiers are handling this. But for some bizarre reason, that doesn't seem to be impacting them to behave significantly differently. And some of the stuff they do is really crazy. If I'm not mistaken, in Manitoba, they have mandated that you can only go shopping for groceries. So if you are going to like a Costco or a Walmart and you're thinking you might pick up, I don't know, maybe a sleeper for the baby, or maybe you need a new pair of boots. No. You can actually, the stores are being fined for not adhering to a food-only policy. Like, that just tells you how crazy some of the thinking is. And here in Alberta, we just literally, as I said in the US video, we really do we're now taken to calling Premier Kenney Premier Trump. He is a Trump wannabe, and he is putting this province in significant danger because of his nonsense. For those of you who are just curious, and these numbers are not exact, but they're close. The United States has, 335 million people. Canada has about 40 million, okay? So even though our numbers are significantly lower, so is our population. And, the impact is sort of just is dire, right? Because we have, of course, fewer hospitals, fewer doctors, fewer nurses, because the population doesn't demand. And that's the other thing that Kenny is doing here in Alberta. He's currently in a fight with the doctors because, he thinks that they're getting paid too much money. All right, so I'm going to stop dwelling on Alberta because, frankly, it's crazy making. Okay, for me, it is, every day that goes by, I have it crystallizes my understanding of what the good souls of the United States have gone through for the last, year, right? That place where you're looking at what's going on and you're like, this just doesn't make any logical sense, like no sense. So, why is this happening? Why is this going on? Hang on, I have to pick up a card that will not come to me. Hold on, I'm just going to pause you. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Interesting. The Knight of Wands was what flew out. And so sometimes the Knight of Wands can represent sort of that immature kind of rushing ahead without giving things due consideration. I guess maybe that could be meaningful. So I want to take a look, generally speaking, at Canada and what we can anticipate. You know, we have cold winters here. And so a lot of indoor stuff goes on. And, you know, it seems to be easy, it spreads easier indoors. And while there are restrictions across the country and certainly by province, you know, this doesn't seem to really be slowing down the spread very much. And, you know, I think part of it in some ways, because we had really flattened out that curve over the summer and into the early fall, I think people just got a little bit complacent, and it's really hard now to kind of buckle back down again. And, you know, Trudeau is trying to get people to take this really seriously again. And unfortunately, the leader of the Conservative Party, O'Toole, is really, really politicizing this and turning it into a, you know, Trudeau's not handling it well, it's costing too much money, and they've resurrected the whole charity scandal, which is not going to go anywhere. I don't, you know, but again, it's politics. So let's take a look and see what in heck is going on in Canada and what we can realistically expect going forward. Here we go. Come on down. I have a question. Okay, so current political situation, Canada, Canadian current politics, Canadian current politics. Go just create some more space here. Well, not surprising. We have the 5 of Pentacles showing up first, followed by the 7 of Pentacles, the 4 of Pentacles, and Judgment. Okay. If I didn't know better, I would swear I was doing a reading on Trump. All right. So, while, by and large, the citizens of Canada are lucky in as much as the federal government is doing everything that they can to try to keep people afloat, try to keep the economy going. There will come a point in time where, because of all the money that was paid out, the recovery is going to be easier. It's not going to be a walk in the park by anybody's imagination, because what you're going to find here in Canada, and I wouldn't be surprised if this doesn't happen in other countries as well, is you're going to get people, once things start opening up again, and, you know, sort of maybe once people have taken care of whatever essentials or needs that were sort of pushed to the side because of COVID, whether that was because there wasn't the money to do it, or you couldn't find the people to do it, you know, or whatever the situation is. Once those sort of immediate needs are taken care of, you're going to find that here in Canada, there really is going to be a real reluctance to sort of return to really, really supporting the economy kind of on like a local level, right? So what you're going to see is people are going to be reluctant to go to the malls because they would rather get stuff sent to them, you know, from Amazon or online, wherever, right? People have gotten kind of used to, after like almost a year of that, and you're going to see people really reluctant to kind of jump back in. And so moving forward, while there is going to be recovery, it is going to take a while just simply because people are not convinced it's not going to happen again, not convinced there isn't going to be a resurgence. And the thing of it is, I don't know at this point anyways, if anybody has actually said, well, the COVID vaccinations are effective. We know that. I haven't actually heard anybody say they're effective for 3 months, 5 years, one shot in a lifetime is pretty good. So I think there's going to be, again, that just reluctance to re-engage. And there are going to be some very, very harsh judgments passed politically. Now, they're going to come from multiple sides because, of course, we have 4 kind of parties here in Canada that are all have come together to make up the current government that we have. And so there's going to be a lot of bickering and name calling and a lot of, we could have done it better. But, it's always good for people who didn't do anything to say after the crisis is over, oh, well, we would have done a much, much better job of that. Then where were you? Why weren't you stepping up and helping the situation as opposed to, heckling and making trouble and making waves? Why were you not helping? But that's politics, right? Alrighty. So, like I said, there's going to be sort of a little bit of a reluctance. Now, I want to say, this is just because it came up with this card. Here in Alberta, Rachel Notley is the leader of the NDP party, which is currently the minority party. I would not be surprised if the next election they get in with a very strong mandate. So there's that. Generally speaking, some provinces have been, even though their numbers are high or scary, for the most part, the premiers of the provinces have really, really been doing a good job. And for the most part, unless they have these other political agendas, they have been working relatively well with the federal government. There is an awareness that everybody is making sacrifices. The Trudeau agenda smashed to smithereens because of COVID, right? Whatever they had hoped to be able to accomplish, that's been really pushed to the wayside because this is of paramount importance. So there's definitely that kind of sacrifices that are being made, and certainly go down the line, right? Local communities are dealing with sacrifices, whether it is, you can't access certain services or information as quickly or as easily, whether there is, less support for local businesses. Some local industries have shut down or really, really been scaled back and minimized. So there's definitely that sense that we're going to feel the sacrifice into the future. The situation really does remind me of, when you hear stories about people who have come through the Great Depression, and because they faced what they faced, they tend to be very frugal and very careful with their money. They don't throw away things just in case you need them again. And I can see the generations that are now dealing with COVID are going to develop some sort of a similar pattern. Now, the blessing to that, and this is not exclusive to Canada by no means, the blessing to that is that as we are moving forward into a time where material concerns are going to be less and less important as we move forward into more of a, Aquarian age philosophy, where it's more inclusive and there's less focus on materialism and more focus on sharing and, being reasonable about what it is that you're buying. So again, there's going to be economic shifts, there's going to be business shifts, because things that may have really, really been in demand 3, 4, 5 years ago, people are going to start to say, well, you know what, maybe I don't need that, or I don't need as much of that, or I realized that that was more about ego or vanity than about actual necessity. So there's definitely going to be some changes. And again, I don't believe this is not exclusive to Canada. There is a lot of worry and anxiety here, but less so than I believe, certainly in the United States, because the money seems to be flowing at least a little bit better. There is money that was extended to students who weren't, like university students, high school students who weren't going to be able to get that part-time job over the summer or work part-time when they returned to school. There was money extended to them through the government. There was money for the disabled. There was just a lot more fluidity of funds. So while there is, so now the big worry is, okay, so not only has the economy taken a hit just because people aren't buying, because in some cases you can't even access the stuff, but there's more worry about exactly how are we going to pay this back? How are we going to try to get anywhere near something that looks like a balanced budget? And you know what? The reality is, listen up, we're not, okay? We're not returning to normal. We're not going back to the way it was. There is a new normal coming. And honestly, that's okay. Because if there's one thing the sort of COVID situation has done is it has made us really evaluate what's important and what is not important. And, really where we want to put our money and where we think, you know what, maybe I'm not going to spend it there. Maybe I'm just going to tuck it away because, wow, we sure have found out what can happen on a rainy day. Now, politically speaking, it looks like there's going to be a fair bit of shenanigans going on in the next little while. Certainly until the vaccine is more widely distributed here in Canada, there's going to be a lot of political nonsense, for lack of a better word, going on. As I said, you always get the party who is not in power being very mouthy about how much better they could have done it. And in some cases, it's absolutely valid. And the statements they make are absolutely valid. In other cases, it is more about just sticking a knife into somebody and trying to create unrest so that maybe you can draw those people, those supporters to one party back to your party. And as I've mentioned before, I sort of almost every time I do a Canadian politics reading, Canadians are sort of notorious for voting people out of office, not into office. So we can definitely look as things move forward. There's going to be some significant political shifting in terms of the parties in power. I don't believe that we have a federal election coming up for a couple of years. I'm not sure about some of the provincial elections. I know that Ford in Ontario, who was really, really fighting an uphill battle there, his popularity seems to have stabilized a little bit because people are pleased with the way things are going. Alberta, not so much. Kenny's popularity is plummeting. BC, that's another one that's kind of interesting because their cases are starting to pick up, and there just seems to be a problem getting compliance. I'm not sure, honestly. I can't tell you whether that is hurting or helping the popularity of the premier and other, like local officials, like mayors. I don't know, but it definitely feels like that one feels BC feels a little bit kind of strangely balanced. It feels like for all the good on one hand, there's sort of an equal opposite on the other hand. And I'm sorry, I can't at this point speak to the other provinces, but overall, generally speaking, that's what you're going to find. You're going to find if people were pleased, the parties stay relatively solid. People not pleased, there's going to be big upheavals. But remember, we're a while away from some provincial elections, which means that unless there's a provincial election going on in your community within the next 10 months or so, there's going to be at least some recovery time there, which could solidify some of the current people in power. I think that the big message overall is that, yeah, you know what, there's going to be scraping, there's going to be fighting, there's going to be political shenanigans and nonsense going on, but ultimately, Canada is going to start recovering. I want to say like spring, like as the snow is melting. I think then you're going to see the numbers starting to drop, and you're going to see recovery going on and just an overall enthusiasm that we really can move forward, that we really are now feeling that we at least have the capacity to move forward back to a, just a sunnier, happier time. However, listen, we've got the Seven of Cups showing up, and we have the Devil showing up. So it's not going to be easy. And it feels as if, definitely with these two cards, there are going to be some hills that we're going to need to climb. But again, we are not unlike every other country. Some have handled the situation way better. Some have handled it way worse. Some parts of the country have handled it better than others. But, Canadians are pretty strong, and we're pretty hardy. And so we will grieve what needs to be grieved. We will acknowledge the losses. And ultimately, we will be prepared to trust and hope and start anew again. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. Canadian politics in comparison to the United States are really boring. There's just not the kind of craziness that goes on here, as certainly we have witnessed in the United States in the last 4 years. I also want to say that the relationship, this is energetic, obviously I put my cards down, the relationship between Canada and the United States is going to be able to mend itself fairly quickly. That doesn't mean that the borders are going to open up and everything's going to be wonderful, but it does feel like some of the damage that was done by Trump, that's going to be mitigated, in some cases reversed. And so it feels, Canadians are incredibly forgiving. And so we are, in many ways, I'm going to be first on the block to say, let bygones be bygones. There's someone new in the White House, and let's just move forward. And that's nice, because you know what? Certainly over the course of the last couple of years that I've been doing this, I've really come to discover that, wow, there are some amazing Americans down there. And again, we are all sharing the continent. And borders are man-made, and we need to remember that, especially when things get tough. Thank you so much for joining me for this. The U.S. reading, it's about Trump voters now and how they're doing and what's going on there, will be released shortly after this one. This one, the Canadian one, always gets uploaded first, followed by the American. So, for now, take care. Be well. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.